Good evening. Thank you so much for making the time and coming to speak with us and spend time with us tonight. It's incredibly important for us to be able to spend time and engage with customers, understand their challenges, hear your feedback, and understand what we can do better and what we can do to build into our roadmap the kind of things that you want to see, the kind of challenges you face. As I go through my presentation, you'll see that as a storage company, Dell has been incredibly acquisitive over the last 5 years. We have acquired upwards of 6 companies. We have spent well over $3 billion building a storage portfolio based on the feedback we get from CIOs such as yourself. Right now, back in Australia, Minister Sachin Pilot from India is actually leading an Indian delegation to visit with Australia to talk about the use of IT in government and connecting with citizens. And so, if you think about what's at the center of that, it's data, the collection of data of our citizens and how we can use technology to improve citizens' lives. Pretty interesting kind of dynamic there. Australia has a population of 22 million in a landmass the size of the United States. I was shocked to learn that Delhi had a population of over 100 million people. So for me, those kind of numbers are just absolutely incredible, but an interesting discussion nonetheless. You heard Aman from Gartner talk about big data. I'm going to cover some slides on big data. And the reason for that is, if you kind of look at the trends that are going on in technology right now, and in business in particular, it may not be something that you're thinking about doing now, but I think it'll become very important in the next couple of years. And it's one of those journeys that you need to start thinking about sooner rather than later. And the reason I say that is because I think if you don't, your CEO or your divisional secretary or your minister or whoever you ultimately work for is probably going to start reading things in the newspaper about how other companies and how other departments are using data. And he's probably going to start thinking about how he might like to do that in his own organization. So if you look at some of the trends across IT right now, consumerization of IT. Many discussions I'm having with CIOs now where they are actively contemplating or have already moved down the path of allowing their employees to bring their own device to work. Particularly for those companies that employ the younger generation, they want to have a seamless kind of integration between the device they use at home and the device that they bring to work and carry one device. And so that's creating a whole bunch of challenges for CIOs and environments because they're creating data on those systems. They are content creation systems. So that throws up a whole bunch of new kind of challenges for those of us that are in the data storage industry. So how do I retain it? How do I secure it? How do I get it off that device? Because that IP or that intellectual property walks out the door each night under the arm of maybe a 20-year-old intern. And maybe some of that data is financial data. And maybe I have a legal responsibility to capture it. So, these are the kind of concepts that we struggle with or are challenged with in technology. The other is the absolute immense growth of smartphones. Something profound happened in the industry last year, and it had huge implications for data. And that profound change was, for the first time ever, smartphones outsold PCs globally. So now, when you think about what was happening in the PC market, it didn't actually decline. It grew as well. So this wasn't a case of one device replacing another. This was yet another device that was now out in the market. And I read a little statistic the other day. It took America Online, the old dial-up company, about 9 years to reach 1 million users. It took Draw Something, which is an app that you can download on Android or on your iPhone. It took them less than 2 months to reach 1 million users, all creating data. And these are all challenges that we have around storage. And this all leads into this whole concept of big data. If it's not real yet, it's certainly becoming real. And I think it's probably more relevant for some customers than others. My favorite big data story actually comes from the United States. one of the huge department store chains over there gave each of their customers a loyalty card, kind of like my hotel room key. And every time they bought something, they'd scan it. So when you paid for it, they'd scan, and the card would capture and uniquely link back to you what you'd bought. Okay, so that was relatively simple. The really smart thing came about when they started putting analytics over the top of that. And so they could, for the first time, start to look at the demographics of their customers. What were they buying? What types of products? And they got even smarter, and they actually started to figure out, so what did pregnant women buy when they were pregnant at different stages of their pregnancy? And if they could figure that out, then they could really start to tailor their offerings to customers in a very unique way, in a way that they'd never done before. Suddenly all this data that they had in their company became extremely powerful. So you think about mass retailing, suddenly they were creating a unique experience. The problem was, and this is why I really like the story, was they started mailing out to their customers, here's some unique offers, here's some things that you think you'd be interested in. And a father happened to open the mail of his daughter, teenage daughter. I have 3 daughters myself. I think if I opened this mail, I'd probably react the way this man reacted, because it was offers around some pregnancy products. And so he contacted the company and he said, what on earth are you doing? You are sending my teenage daughter information about buying products that are related to pregnancy. So they apologized, as you would expect. Look, sorry, terribly sorry. And so he decided to take it a step further. He was going to take formal action and spent time with his daughter and told her what had happened. And she unfortunately had to confess to her father that she actually was pregnant, and the department store had figured out that she was pregnant before he did. So big data can be incredibly powerful. You think about the discussion that happened in that household after she found out. But they figured that out because of the products that she bought and what she looked at in the store, and then how did they link that? Incredibly powerful. It's kind of a humorous story unless you're the father and the daughter. There are many other examples of where you've seen some very positive outcomes, but as a company or as an entity or a department, being able to deliver that kind of information or that kind of tailored service to your user or to your customer or to your citizen becomes incredibly powerful. And the problem is, when we look at big data, is you start to think of all of the problems that you have right now. And big data is like a mirage in the desert for the thirsty man. You can see the oasis and you're crawling towards it, but it just seems to be getting hotter. And so it is becoming real, and some companies are doing it very, very well. But what I want to kind of talk to you tonight about is how do you get there? How do you start that journey? If it is, as Gartner predicts, a kind of a 2013, sort of 2015 type discussion, there's some steps we really need to start thinking about right now. So we came up with this concept of a maturity model. So if you think through big data and that customer that I just talked about, or that company that I just talked about, they went through some steps very similar to this to be able to deliver those kind of analytics to their customers. So stage 1, chaos. I'm sure we can all identify, at least on some level, of chaos in the data center. So no data, no value, no control, plenty of risk because you don't have any of those controls. And if someone came knocking at the door and said, I'm here to investigate you for some data-related issue and I want to kind of look at your data, and you can't produce it, then you probably have a legal problem. You're non-compliant if you're in some kind of legislative or legal framework, and no access. All of this leads to no action. All you've got is bits of data kind of floating around. Stage 2 then is, well, now you're getting a little smarter. And, I think we all identify with this one. We're certainly retaining data, and you can probably look at your upgrade bill that you're getting each year and you can confirm that you're certainly retaining lots of data, but you don't know what the value is. Lots of unstructured data coming into your environment. You probably access some of it, or on a repeated basis, 10% of the time. The other 90% is just sitting there on your drives and spinning. Again, unknown value. You don't know what the quality of the data is. You've got some manual controls, not much automated. You're spending a lot of money on managing that data, and there's limited access. So the data goes in. There are some people who have access to it, but it's broadly not available to the company for any great value. Very reactive. Probably if that same investigator came and knocked at the door, now you actually have some hope of recovering some of that data. I was talking to a CIO who was in probably stage 2. His accounting department had got themselves into a little bit of trouble, and the Stock Exchange Commission in the United States came to visit, and they said, we want to kind of go back over 5 years and look at your data. The company ended up paying a fine somewhere in the vicinity of $80 to $90 million. So not a small amount of money. He estimates that it cost him twice as much to actually get the data to the investigating authority because of it was in this kind of state. So, yeah, the accounting department did some things that were really, really bad, and they kind of fixed all those problems. But what it showed them was they had a huge data problem, and it cost them $200 million over and above the $80 million that they'd already paid. So stage 3, you're really starting to get a lot smarter now. So your storage is optimized, and you'll start to see some terms in here that resonate with what Gartner was talking about around that storage strategy. You understand the value of your data. That's why you've optimized your storage environment. It's policy-based, so you've actually now start to write down your policy around how you're going to manage that data. You probably have a tiering catalog. You probably have some access controls. You understand the governance requirements, but you've also started to get access to that data, to the people that can use it, the people that are saying, if I only had access to this, I would have a better marketing program. I'd have a better sales offer. I'd have a better... You can fill in the blank. Now you're sustaining. Okay, you're starting to really start to move up that stack. This is now all about storage. This is really the storage part of this big data discussion. Stage 4, now you're starting to get into some simple analytics. You've got the data under control. It's manageable. Now you can start to put an overlay of analytics onto it and actually start to understand what that data is all about. You're starting to correlate the data. You're starting to figure out, so how do these data points work together? How do I figure out that the woman walking through the store picking up the products is pregnant in Ohio, the same as the lady is in California, the same as the lady is in even Delhi, Mumbai? Your interpretation, though, is still manual. So at least you can get that data out, but you've probably got an army of analysts that are trying to figure that out, but it's searchable. You can go look for something, you can get a return, and you can figure some things out. Now you're starting to be very proactive, and you're really moving from information to knowledge. And stage 5, this is where you would start to see a company like Amazon.com operating. Very complex analytics, complex modeling, very complex correlations. They can figure out bits of data that aren't actually seemingly linked and bring them together and take some value from it. There's very complex interpretation that's often automated, and you're getting some complex decision making. So you want to talk about complex correlations. Any of you that are involved in any kind of social network or social media will understand some of the very complex correlations that those companies and those networks create. I was reading a story about a man in the United States who's just been charged with bigotry. In the United States, it's illegal to have 2 wives. I'm busy enough keeping up with the wife that I have, so why this man wanted to secretly have 2 wives was beyond me. But the reason he got caught was actually Facebook. So, interestingly, he was linked to his, I guess let's call it his first wife or his former wife on Facebook. One day, she got a notification suggesting that she link to this other woman. Facebook had figured out this correlation. The correlation was him, and that he was actually married to both of them. And so she linked and found out all of this information, and it was a very, very complex correlation because they had no other friend in their network. And he didn't actually create any correlation, but Facebook figured it out. His first wife figured it out, then his second wife figured it out. They told the police. He's now up on charges, and he's probably made the worst investment decision of his life, because I suspect the first wife's going to take 50% of his fortune in the divorce, and the second wife's going to take the other 50%. So, beware of big data. Very, very powerful. So, what's the value of these big data maturity stages? Why do we suggest that you think through this? Because big data, as Gartner said, has an element of marketing hype to it. It's the big shiny new thing. We in the IT vendor market, we love selling bright shiny new things. And when we get bored with one bright shiny new thing, we'll invent a new bright shiny new thing to go sell. However, big data is real. You think of some of the companies that are using all of that data that you're amassing and using it effectively, it's becoming a competitive advantage for them. And that's why I think at some point, your CEO or the leader of your organization is going to come and ask you, how does he unlock that value, or how does she unlock that value, and how do they use it? If you don't kind of follow through those maturity stages and actually address those issues, I think you'll find yourself in that disillusionment, that kind of area where you think, that big data was a big shiny new thing that the vendor came and sold me, and it doesn't work. Because if you kind of look at the purple and the yellow line down the bottom there, you didn't get the return on investment. You didn't optimize the environment, you just went and spent a whole lot of money on analytics. And what you measured was, well, the data you had was garbage already. All you did was analyze a whole bunch of more garbage. And so you've got to be very careful. It's the old garbage in, garbage out scenario. That issue doesn't change just because it's got a fancy name like big data. So there are some real disciplines and some real steps that we think you need to work through here to really get the value and the return on investment from big data. So we've talked about some of the business opportunities, the business challenges. The IT challenges around this are equally big. Gartner alluded to some of those in the presentation. You have to ingest and store massive amounts of data. And I can see you all kind of nodding your head going, well, I'm doing that anyway, right? I've got this massive amount of unstructured data, so I've probably got a big tick of I know how to do that really particularly well. You've got to figure out how you reduce the cost of it, because if you want to start using it, and your business is going to start using it, they're going to want to probably hold on to it a little bit longer than normal. Not meeting your backup SLAs, because now you've got this huge volumes of data. You're going to have to meet your strict compliance retention. There's a whole list of things that as an IT leader you're going to have to work through in this big data environment. So in Dell, we're thinking about this pretty hard. We have some solutions that we've brought to market now, partnering with organizations like Rainstorm, Hadoop, Cloudera. And you recall that I broke kind of those maturity stages down. I said stage 1 to 3 is really all about storage. Stage 4 and 5 is really about compute, right? So there is a huge compute requirement for the analytics side of this. You're going to take that data and actually going to start doing something with it. That requires a significant amount of compute power. And so we're partnering with Hadoop and Cloudera to provide that platform. So you can look at some of the numbers on there. The storage solution using Rainstorm, 1/10 of the cost, 98% of the data footprint reduction. So as you're thinking through data center sprawl, the cost of keeping the lights on, the cost of power, cost of cooling, the ability to reduce your footprint is key. Faster queries and analytics, and it's all tested, so lowering that risk. The compute solution is where things start to really kind of get interesting. You need a lot of nodes to go run this. You need a lot of compute power to run those analytics and to get those kind of results. Any of you who've seen photos of Google's data center or of Amazon's data center, you'll start to get an idea of what they're actually using some of those servers for. It's actually the big data solution. I want to kind of call attention that you'll see a comment on there about Dell Crowbar. So Dell has made a significant investment to the community. This is all open source community. We believe profoundly in the power of open source and that community. And so we've made significant investment and donation of open source and IP to that community for it to make it improve and make it available. So that's kind of our big data view. What I want to kind of step through now is what's Dell's point of view on storage. So a little bit kind of closer to home in those kind of phases 1 to 3. And I've got a reason I've put the forklift truck up there. We have made significant investments, as I said, in storage. And we've moved from being a storage reseller and selling other people's technology to now really owning our own IP. So becoming a true R&D player around storage. And one of the things that we did before we kind of embarked on that journey was we went out and we did a lot of listening to customers. And one of the pain points that came up over and over again was, you know what, every time I want to upgrade and I want to get to the next level of capability, it feels like I have to drive a dirty great forklift into my data center and rip out all of my storage and start again. And it'd be pretty cool if I didn't have to do that. And so we had these discussions over and over again. Things like forklift upgrades. Things like, how do I automate? How do I make this easy to manage? How do I reduce the cost of administrative overhead? How do I reduce the cost of labor? And so that really guided our storage strategy. So here's some of the pain points. And I'm sure you'll identify with some of these. Data growth is out of control. There's inefficient utilization. Data's tipped to grow something like 44x over the next several years from where we are today. 80% of that data is inactive. So 20% we access at least once more, but 80% of it's sitting there doing nothing, often on tier 1, very, very expensive storage. Systems are complex. They're inflexible to manage. Replication is costly, data recovery is difficult, slow, sometimes doesn't even work. And then when you're ready to go to that next step and perhaps fix some of those problems, you've got to get the forklift truck out again. So these are the pain points we had in mind when we started to invest. So these were our guiding tenets. How did we adapt to change? How did we take what's a rigid cost center and all of this data and turn it into a productivity center? And how did we move from operation to innovation? The way we did that and the banner under which we're doing that is what we call fluid data. So if you think about liquid, you think about water, you put it on any surface, it will find the most efficient and effective way to move across that surface. We think about data the same way. What's the most efficient and effective way for that data to move through whatever surface it's on or through the storage array? So looking for maximum efficiency, greater agility, and guaranteed resiliency. And these were really the core pillars of what we set out to achieve in building the fluid data architecture. This company here, local Indian company, Adrian, is doing some. We're always profoundly amazed by the very cool things that our customers do with our technology. So I want to kind of give you a proof point here. They have deployed SAP on our EqualLogic platform. So EqualLogic is an iSCSI protocol. I probably can't count the amount of hours that I've got into debates around which protocol is better, Fibre Channel, iSCSI, does it really matter? The great thing about this case study is it shows just what you can do with the technology that we have. So you can see the quote there from the CIO, Group CIO and President for Business Excellence, talking about the performance he gets from the EqualLogic platform and the operational efficiency, 40% operational efficiency increase, 20% reduction in customer delivery time due to user productivity, all on a Dell platform. So some very quantifiable improvements and results coming from those tenets that we've put in place around fluid data. Whoops, just hit the button a little too quickly there. So what we wanted to do is, in investing in our own storage, and one of the reasons we took that path was Dell is an end-to-end solution provider. Everything from the mobile device right through to the data center, we have technologies, desktop, notebook, server, now network, software, and storage. And the value that we saw was we had all of these pieces. If we integrated them, we made them work better together, and we were in that had that unique opportunity to go do that because we didn't have legacy architecture that we had to kind of go sustain. Then we had this great ability to do some really innovative things. So how did we move data seamlessly between each of these tiers? How did we manage that data progression so it goes from the server even at tier 0 in the server right through to the cloud, and offer solutions that enabled that all to happen seamlessly? So How do we become more efficient? How do we become more agile? How do we become more resilient? So you can see down the bottom with the little balls moving backwards and forwards that concept of this seamless progression of data backwards and forwards through the different tiers and through the different platforms, from file and block object data, through load balancing, through local recovery, replication, going offline, going off premises and into the cloud. So that's the vision that we had when we started to think about what we wanted to do with our own storage IP, and particularly with the fluid data architecture. So I'm going to talk about where we are today. We have been on this acquisition trail for about 5 years. The first major acquisition we did was EqualLogic. We've added into that technologies such as Compellent, Ocarina for dedupe, RNA networks, Exanet, which has formed the basis of our fluid data system. So you can see right now there are places you can get started today. So virtualized scale-out storage, automatic tiering and migration across the RAID types. Compellent was designed to do that out of the box in an automated fashion. Every vendor will tell you that they have those capabilities. Yes, we can do thin provisioning. Yes, we can do auto tiering. But does it do it? Do you actually use it? Compellent was actually designed to do that out of the box. You plug it in and away it goes. Object-based archiving. Scalable, cost-effective, long-term retention of your data. Content-aware, policy-based. So you can set your policy-based rules up front, and we go manage that. Backup to disk, so space optimized around a disk-based appliance, and standard backup processes, all the standard backup processes that you'd be familiar with. I think I've just pressed one too many there. And scalable unified infrastructure. So integrated file services based and clustered file systems. So that's where we are today. All of that is available, and we're very happy to come talk to you about that and deploy those solutions. We also want to talk about where we're going. It's very important for us that we have the opportunity to partner with customers that are looking for, so where do I go next? What's in your roadmap? And we really want to share that with you. We don't want that to be kind of a secret, because it doesn't matter really where you are in this journey. We think that sharing with you what we think is important and where we're going improves that partnership. So in the future, common optimized architecture, so content-aware deduplication and compression across the environment. So building dedupe into each of our platforms is a key strategy for us. And that was one of the key pieces of feedback we heard was, you know, every time there's some time of new technology, it seems like I have to buy a new box. And that was when we purchased Ocarina. Ocarina had industry-leading dedupe, unbelievable compression and dedupe technology, fantastic algorithms, and they were putting that into an appliance. We've released that product, but really where we're taking that technology is integrating it into our platforms so that dedupe becomes part of the other feature sets that we have. Content-aware, rehead rate only on content access. Very, very powerful. Unified block and object management. So integrated migration and management across the entire infrastructure. Seamless server integration. Bought this very, very cool company called RNA Networks. What RNA's technology is going to allow us to do is within our 12G server in the future, build a tier 0 server-based storage. So you think about fast read-write access, you can't get much faster than having that inside the server. That's what we talk about with tier 0. And if you think back to when I said, what did we think was the power of going and building out our own storage strategy, was when you combine that with our server business and with our network business, our ability to integrate and build alignment and build a better together story where those technologies are highly optimized to work together, then you start to understand the power of an integrated solution that we're starting to build out here. So from the server all the way through to the cloud and storage, you'll have that level of integration. And then seamless cloud integration. You know, I think everybody's thinking about how do I move to the cloud, how do I get the efficiency, how do I improve my utilization. and how do I integrate my storage and my data strategy into that? And so you'll see seamless cloud integration come into that space as well. So just quickly go back. You can see where we are today. We've got some outstanding products and technologies and platforms which we think can make a real difference to some of the challenges that you have. But where we are going, we don't think really anybody else has got those pieces, particularly around that dedupe and ocarina type space to replicate that. So one of the best kept secrets about Dell is the size of our storage portfolio. I continually enjoyed talking to CIOs and talking to them about our portfolio and the technologies, and typically the answer coming back, well, I never knew that. That's outstanding, that's a great portfolio, and it's always an enjoyable discussion. And you can see all the way from Compellent, a fiber channel multi-protocol enterprise storage class product, through to EqualLogic, fantastic horizontal scale-up and peer-to-peer scaling, PowerVault MD and NX for modular disk storage, PowerVault DL for backup appliance, DR4000, so it's a complete portfolio. We have a technology platform that really does address those challenges that you're having. But like anything, the hardware is only as good as the services and the implementation that goes with it. So we have an entire portfolio of storage services. We've invested not just in the technology, but in the people to go actually maximize the benefit and value of that. We have a global storage services business, all the way through design and implementation, through to the support of that environment. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't looked into the value and the capability of the Copilot support system for Compellent, it's well worth a discussion. It's an industry-leading, won many, many awards for storage support, and those of you that you own Compellent, I'm sure would speak very highly of the service, but we think it's one of the unique differentiators of that particular platform. So it's easy for me as the vendor to, kind of like a proud parent, stand up here and talk about all the things that we think we're doing well. We are getting some industry recognition, some great awards coming through. #1 in product reliability and tech support. So that's a great accolade for our teams and for the platform, because that's one of the key things that customers look for in a storage platform. Is it reliable? And when I do have a problem, what's the support like? We're #2 in overall customer satisfaction. So for a company that traditionally has not been viewed as a storage vendor to come out #2, we were extremely proud of. And then you can see some industry awards around our particular technologies. So what I've talked to you really about today is kind of give you an overview of some of Dell's perspectives. What our view is on big data. Yes, there is a lot of marketing hype around it, but we also think there's some real practical value you can get from it. And then also where we're going with our own storage strategy and the fluid data architecture. Some of the challenges that Gartner alluded to, we've specifically invested in these platforms to go address that. Out of the box, automated, simple to manage, bring down the cost, allow you to free up funds to go invest in other technologies. So at some point, when you start to do that big data migration, the money's got to come from somewhere. Most likely it's going to come out of your existing budget. And so these are the kinds of technologies that free up that money for innovation around concepts such as big data. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, thank you for your presence here, and I look forward to meeting you outside afterwards. Thank you very much.